Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishna Kiddushin, Perek Gimel, Chapter 3, Mishnah Yud Gimel, Mishnah 13. Continuation from yesterday's Mishnah. Rabbi Tarfon Oimer, Rabbi Tarfon says, Yochaylin mamzerim litoher. A mamzer has the ability to purify. Purify means that it's possible for him to work it out that his children should be able to become ordinary Jews. As we know, a mamzer cannot marry ever into a regular Jewish woman. There are certain women he's allowed to marry, but even if those he's allowed to marry, the child that is produced is a mamzer. So what can he do? So Rabbi Tarfon says that a mamzer is able to purify, to make his children, eligible to marry anybody they want. Ketzad, how is that? So here it goes. Mamzer shanasa shivcha. The mamzer marries a shivcha. A shivcha is a Gentile slave woman. Okay. Now, when we said before that if someone has a child with a shivcha kananis, meaning with a Gentile slave woman, who, as the Mishnah said before, there is no Kiddushin on her. No one can have Kiddushin on her. There's no Kiddushin on a shivcha kananis. And therefore, who does a child follow in that situation? Child follows the mother, shivcha kananis. The child becomes a slave. That's its status. A slave has a status, has obligated to certain mitzvahs. Not allowed to marry a Jewish woman, a regular Jewish woman, but in many ways he's somewhat Jewish, and if he'd be slave, to be completely Jewish, like a convert. So mamzer shenasa shivcha, the mamzer who married a shivcha, habalad eved. What's the status of a child? As we just said before, the child follows the status of the mother in that case. Because as we said before, a woman that no one has any Kiddushin on her, the child follows her. And therefore the child has the status of a slave. Whose slave is it? It's your slave. The same way she's your slave, so too, the child is your slave. Shichroi, the next step is, what do? You free the child. Now the truth is, even if it wouldn't be your child, whoever owns this shivcha, whoever owns a slave woman, the child is now his slave. Shichroi. Now, if the master then goes ahead and frees the child, nimsa ben chayrin, the child comes up being a ben chayrin, a free man. What happens to a slave that gets freed? Has the status of a ger, of a convert. He can marry anybody he wants. And therefore, that is the solution. It's a very specific solution, but it's solution for the mamzer that he can now, again, it's very specific here, as we're going to see soon. We're talking specifically about a mamzer, the male mamzer. Not talking about a mamzeris, if the woman's a mamzer. The male is a mamzer, he marries the shivcha, and as the Baratunura says, he's actually allowed to marry her. That's a very interesting thing. Even though the mamzer is fully Jewish, but he's actually allowed to marry her, which I would assume, as we said before, there's no Kiddushin on her, but you can designate her as his wife and have children from her, and you're allowed to do that. And then that will be the way by which the child will now become no more mamzer, because instead of following the father in this situation, it follows the mother, and the status of the mother is a slave. The child's a slave. Child's freed slave is like a convert, can marry anybody he wants. Now, the truth is, as I bring down here in the notes, the same solution technically could have happened if he would have married a non-Jewish woman. The same thing would be. If he has a child from a non-Jewish woman, what's the status of the child? Child's not Jewish. Child's not a mamzer, child's not Jewish. Okay, so now that child were to decide to convert, child can marry regularly. Just so that would be a solution too, just that's not a permissible solution. He's not allowed to marry a non-Jewish woman. He can marry the shivcha kananis, he can marry the slave woman, but he cannot be married to the non-Jewish woman. So therefore, Reb Tarfon wanted to give a permissible way by which the mamzer is able to clear his children. Now, this only applies by a mamzer, the male. A mamzer doesn't apply, because how would we think it should possibly apply? Maybe the mamzera should marry an Evet Kanani, right? She should marry a slave, a male Gentile slave, and we'll say that by cohabiting with her and having a child, the child has the status of a slave. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way by the male. by the male slave, it doesn't follow him. And therefore, it would automatically be actually be following the mamzeris, the woman who's the woman. If you're in the situation where the woman is a shivcha kananis, you'll follow the woman. But if the woman is a mamzeris, you're not going to follow the male, you're going to follow the female. And therefore, even though the father was an Eved Kanani, nonetheless, being that the mother is a mamzeris, and she is a woman that Kiddushin could be made on, right? It's possible to make Kiddushin on mamzeris. Therefore, the child's going to follow her, and therefore, this is not a solution for a mamzeris. Rebbe Eliezer says, he argues on Reb Tarfon, and he says, Harei zeh Eved Mamzer. This child that comes from the mamzer and the shivcha actually has two statuses. It has the status of a slave because his mother is a slave, and he also has the status of a mamzer because his father is a mamzer. Bartunur explains, according to, they bring down here in the notes, Rebbe Eliezer learns from a verse in the Torah that a mamzer passes his status to his children regardless of whom he marries. So that means that this child has both statuses. What would that mean? That would mean that even if the child would be freed from being a slave, he'd still remain a mamzer. And therefore, this is not, according to Rebbe Eliezer, there is no solution. The child's going to remain a mamzer anyway. But the halacha follows Reb Tarfon. Have a wonderful, and that halacha is that in this case when the mamzer marries a shivcha kananis, a female slave woman, the child has the status of a slave, and once the child is freed, the child is considered a freed slave, like a ger, and can marry regularly. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Reverend. So that's only